Close your eyes and allow the noise of the outer world to soften into silence. There is a deeper world within you, one that does not demand, does not rush, does not compare. It simply exists, patiently waiting to be acknowledged. Within you lives both the light you celebrate and the shadow you often deny. Self-love is not found in rejecting what feels broken, but in embracing it with quiet understanding. The parts you hide are not your enemies, they are fragments of your story asking only to be seen without judgment. There is a gentle truth unfolding beneath your thoughts tonight. You have carried burdens that were never meant to stay, old wounds, past voices, lingering expectations. You held onto them perhaps, believing they defined you, but they do not. They never did. Letting go is not an act of weakness, it is an act of trust. Trust that you are more than your past. Trust that what leaves creates space for something deeper to emerge. The mind resists release because it fears the unknown, yet the soul understands that freedom lives there. Notice the tension within your body, the subtle resistance, the quiet holding on. You do not need to force it away, simply observe it. In that observation, something begins to shift. The unconscious responds not to force, but to awareness. You are not required to have everything resolved tonight. Healing is not a task to complete, but a process to allow. Beneath your effort to control, there is a natural intelligence guiding you toward wholeness. As you drift deeper into stillness, imagine placing every worry, every regret, every unanswered question into the hands of something greater within you. Not to abandon them, but to release your grip. There is wisdom in you that knows how to carry what you cannot. Self-love is not loud. It does not demand recognition. It appears in quiet moments like this, when you choose not to fight yourself, when you allow yourself to simply be, without correction, without pressure. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to release the version of yourself that no longer fits. You are allowed to become unfamiliar to your past. In this space between waking and dreaming, something gentle begins to unfold. The mind loosens its hold, and the deeper self rises, not with answers, but with presence. And presence is enough. Let go of the need to understand everything tonight. Let go of the need to fix, to chase, to hold on. What is meant for you does not require force. What is leaving does not need to be followed. Breathe slowly. Feel the weight of your body sinking into rest. There is nothing you need to prove here. You are already whole, even in your becoming. And as sleep begins to take you, remember this quiet truth. Nothing essential can ever be lost, only transformed. Self-love begins in a place most people try to avoid, in the quiet recognition that you are not made only of what is admirable, but also of what is difficult to face. There is a tendency to construct an identity around what feels acceptable, polished, and worthy of approval, while pushing aside the parts that seem flawed or uncomfortable. Yet what is denied does not disappear. It settles deeper into the unconscious, shaping thoughts, reactions, and patterns in ways that remain unseen but deeply influential. To accept both light and shadow is to step out of illusion and into truth. The light within you reflects your strengths, your kindness, your potential, and the qualities that bring connection and meaning. The shadow, however, carries what has been rejected, suppressed, or misunderstood. It may hold fear, jealousy, anger, insecurity, or past pain, not as signs of failure, but as unintegrated aspects of the self-seeking recognition. There is a quiet courage required to turn inward and face these hidden elements without judgment. The instinct may be to resist or correct them immediately, to reshape yourself into something more ideal. But transformation does not begin with force. It begins with awareness. When you allow yourself to see these parts clearly without labeling them as good or bad, something shifts within the psyche. The tension between what you are and what you think you should be begins to soften. The shadow loses its power when it is brought into the light of consciousness. What once controlled you from beneath the surface becomes something you can understand, something you can hold with compassion rather than fear. In this process, self-love emerges not as a superficial affirmation, but as a deep and stable acceptance of your whole being. There is no need to become perfect to be worthy of peace. The wholeness you seek is not found in eliminating your darkness, but in integrating it. Each part of you, whether celebrated or hidden, belongs to the same inner landscape. When you stop dividing yourself into fragments, you begin to experience a sense of unity that cannot be easily shaken. In that unity, there is a quiet freedom, a release from the constant effort to prove, hide, or escape. And what remains is a deeper connection to yourself that feels honest, grounded, and real. Letting go is often misunderstood as an act of losing something valuable, as if release automatically creates emptiness. The mind clings to what is familiar, even when it causes strain, because familiarity feels like safety. Yet beneath this attachment lies a deeper truth, one that becomes visible only when you begin to observe the weight you have been carrying for far too long. There are thoughts, memories, and emotional ties that once served a purpose but no longer align with who you are becoming. Still, they remain, not because they are needed, but because they have been held onto out of habit or fear. This holding creates an imbalance within the psyche, a subtle tension between your present self and what you continue to carry from the past. Letting go begins when you recognize that not everything you have held on to is meant to stay. It is not a rejection of your experiences nor a denial of their significance. Instead, it is an acknowledgement that growth requires movement, and movement cannot occur when you are anchored to what has already fulfilled its role. There is a natural rhythm within you that seeks equilibrium. When something no longer belongs, it disrupts that rhythm, creating restlessness, confusion, or emotional heaviness. These feelings are not signs of failure. They are signals guiding you toward release, urging you to restore a sense of inner alignment. The act of letting go is not forceful. It does not demand that you erase memories or silence emotions. It invites you to loosen your grip, to allow space between you and what you have been holding. In that space, clarity begins to fall. You start to see that what you feared losing was often tied more to identity than to truth. There is a quiet intelligence within the psyche that understands when something has reached its end. Trusting this intelligence requires surrender, not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of allowing life within you to reorganize itself without resistance. As you release what no longer fits, something subtle begins to shift. The tension that once occupied your inner world starts to dissolve. What replaces it is not emptiness, but a sense of lightness, a return to balance that feels both unfamiliar and deeply natural. You begin to realize that nothing essential has been taken from you. What remains is what truly belongs, what resonates with your present state of being. The rest was never meant to define you, only to shape you for a time. In this return to balance, there is a quiet strength, a grounded presence that does not depend on holding or controlling. And within that presence, you find a deeper sense of peace that does not need to grasp in order to exist. Beneath the surface of conscious thought lies a vast and often overlooked dimension of the mind, one that quietly shapes perception, emotion, and behavior without demanding attention. This inner depth is not chaotic or meaningless, but structured in ways that reflect personal history, hidden desires, unresolved conflicts, and unrealized potential. What appears on the surface as confusion or emotional disturbance often has its origin in this unseen layer, where experiences are stored not as clear narratives but as symbols, impressions, and patterns. The unconscious communicates in a language that is subtle and indirect. It does not speak in logical sentences or straightforward explanations. Instead, it reveals itself through dreams, recurring thoughts, sudden emotional reactions, and intuitive insights that seem to arise without clear cause. These expressions are not random. They are attempts to bring awareness to what has been neglected or suppressed, guiding attention toward areas that require understanding. Healing does not occur by ignoring these signals or trying to control them through force. When the unconscious is dismissed, its influence does not fade. It becomes more persistent, shaping behavior in ways that feel automatic or difficult to explain. Patterns repeat, emotions intensify, and a sense of disconnection may grow, not because something is broken, but because something important remains unseen. To move toward wholeness requires a willingness to turn inward and engage with this deeper aspect of the psyche. This engagement is not about uncovering a single hidden truth, but about developing a relationship with what exists beneath awareness. It involves observing without immediate judgment, allowing thoughts and feelings to emerge without forcing them into predefined categories. As this process unfolds, fragments of the self that were once isolated begin to integrate. What was previously experienced as conflict starts to reveal its purpose. Even discomfort carries meaning, pointing toward areas where growth has been delayed or avoided. In this way, the unconscious becomes not a source of disturbance, but a guide that leads toward greater coherence. There is an intelligence within this hidden dimension that moves toward balance and unity. It does not rush or demand perfection. It unfolds gradually, responding to attention and openness. The more it is acknowledged, the less it needs to express itself through tension or disruption. Wholeness is not achieved by eliminating what is hidden, but by allowing it to become part of conscious awareness. In that integration, there is a shift from fragmentation to continuity, where different aspects of the self no longer compete for expression, but exist within a broader sense of understanding. Through this quiet dialogue between the conscious and the unconscious, a deeper sense of alignment begins to take shape, revealing a path toward healing that is not imposed from the outside, but discovered from within. Emotional pain is often approached as something to escape, silence, or overcome as quickly as possible. The immediate reaction is to resist it, to distract the mind or suppress the feeling in order to regain a sense of control. Yet beneath this instinct lies a misunderstanding of its nature. Pain is not an interruption of life's flow, but an expression of something within that is asking to be acknowledged. Each emotional disturbance carries information that the conscious mind has not yet fully understood. It may arise from unmet needs, unresolved experiences, or inner conflicts that have remained hidden beneath daily awareness. When these elements are ignored, they do not disappear. They gather intensity, shaping reactions and perceptions in subtle but persistent ways. To see pain as an enemy creates a division within the self. One part attempts to maintain order and stability, while another holds the discomfort that has been pushed aside. This inner split generates tension, making the pain feel more overwhelming than it might otherwise be. Resistance amplifies what it tries to eliminate, turning a signal into a struggle. When the approach shifts from resistance to observation, something begins to change. Instead of asking how to get rid of the feeling, attention turns toward understanding it. What is this emotion pointing toward? What has been left unexamined? In this space of inquiry, pain becomes less of a threat and more of a message waiting to be interpreted. There is a form of intelligence within emotional pain. It does not arise without cause, nor does it persist without purpose. It highlights areas where the inner world is out of alignment, where something essential has been neglected or misunderstood. By bringing awareness to these areas, the psyche begins to reorganize itself in a way that supports greater balance. This does not mean that pain must be held on to or indulged indefinitely. It means allowing it to exist long enough to reveal its meaning. As understanding deepens, the intensity often begins to shift on its own. What once felt heavy starts to loosen, not because it was forced away, but because it has been recognized. Avoidance may offer temporary relief, but it leaves the underlying pattern unchanged. The same emotions return, often in different forms, until they are finally given the attention they require. In this way, pain persists not as punishment, but as a guide that refuses to be ignored. When it is approached with patience and openness, emotional pain begins to transform. It becomes a pathway rather than an obstacle, leading toward a deeper awareness of the self. What was once feared starts to reveal its role in shaping growth, inviting a more honest connection with what lies beneath the surface. Through this shift in perspective, the relationship with pain evolves from conflict to understanding, allowing it to serve its natural function as a guide toward greater clarity and inner alignment. Desire for control often arises from a need to feel secure in an uncertain world. The mind attempts to organize, predict, and manage every possible outcome in order to avoid discomfort or unpredictability. This effort can appear useful on the surface, yet beneath it lies a constant tension, a quiet strain created by trying to hold together what is naturally fluid and ever-changing. Control gives the illusion of stability, but it also limits the natural movement of life within the psyche. Thoughts become rigid, emotions are filtered or suppressed, and experiences are shaped to fit expectations rather than being allowed to unfold freely. In this state, the inner world becomes constrained, and peace feels distant, as if it depends on maintaining a perfect arrangement that can never truly be achieved. Surrender is often misunderstood as weakness or passivity. It is seen as giving up or losing direction. In reality, it is a shift in relationship with what cannot be controlled. It is the recognition that not every thought must be managed, not every emotion must be corrected, and not every outcome must be predicted in advance. When control begins to loosen, there is an initial sense of uncertainty. The familiar structure that once defined stability starts to dissolve, and the mind may respond with resistance. Yet beneath that resistance, something quieter begins to emerge. There is a subtle release of tension, a softening that allows the inner world to breathe without restriction. Peace does not arise from forcing stillness or eliminating all disturbance. It appears when the constant effort to control subsides. In that absence of struggle, the mind no longer needs to defend itself against every possibility. It becomes more receptive, more open to experience without immediately trying to shape or resist it. There is an intelligence within the psyche that does not rely on conscious control. It operates through balance, adjusting and responding in ways that are often more effective than deliberate effort. Trusting this process requires letting go of the belief that everything must be directed from the surface level of awareness. As surrender deepens, the sense of self begins to shift. Identity becomes less tied to outcomes and more connected to presence. There is less need to prove, to manage, or to secure every aspect of life. What replaces that effort is a grounded awareness that remains steady even as circumstances change. In this state, peace is no longer something to be achieved through control, but something that naturally reveals itself when control is no longer the center of experience. Allowing a deeper calm to take shape without force or resistance, inner transformation rarely announces itself in dramatic moments or sudden clarity. It unfolds in subtle shifts that often go unnoticed at first, moving beneath the surface of conscious awareness where deeper processes take place. The mind tends to look for visible change, for clear markers of progress, yet the most significant developments occur in silence, where attention is not constantly interfering. Beneath daily thoughts and routines, the psyche is continuously reorganizing itself. Experiences are being processed, meanings are being reshaped, and connections are forming between aspects of the self that were once separate. This activity does not require constant observation to function. In fact, it often becomes more effective when it is not forced into awareness too quickly. There is a tendency to seek immediate understanding, to analyze every feeling and interpret every shift as it happens. While reflection has its place, excessive control over the process can interrupt the natural rhythm of transformation. Some changes need time to develop in the background, away from the pressure of conscious evaluation. Moments of confusion or emotional uncertainty can be part of this quiet movement. They may seem like signs of being lost, yet they often indicate that something within is adjusting, dissolving old patterns, and making space for new perspectives. What feels unclear on the surface may be deeply structured at another level. The unconscious plays a central role in this process, holding material that is not yet ready to be fully recognized. It introduces change gradually, allowing the conscious mind to adapt without becoming overwhelmed. This gradual unfolding creates a sense of continuity, even when the direction is not immediately visible. Trust becomes an essential element in allowing transformation to occur. Not trust in a specific outcome, but in the process itself. The understanding that growth does not always need to be directed or fully understood in order to be real. There is a quiet intelligence at work that moves toward integration, even when awareness lags behind. As time passes, the effects of this inner work begin to appear. Reactions change, perspectives shift, and what once felt rigid becomes more flexible. These changes may seem small in isolation, yet together they reflect a deeper reorganization that has been taking place without constant attention. The need to track every step begins to fade as a different kind of awareness develops, one that is less focused on control and more attuned to presence. In that presence, transformation continues to unfold naturally, without force or urgency. What emerges from this quiet process is not a sudden reinvention, but a gradual alignment, where different parts of the self begin to move together with greater coherence, revealing a depth that was always there, waiting to take shape beyond the reach of constant observation.